Hello, I'm Michael Wallace, the high school pastor at Westover, and welcome to the first of our student ministry parent roundtable discussions. I've got with me a couple of parenting experts, and they are...
Experts.
Yes, expert number one. I'm Chris Hardy. I'm an associate pastor here at Westover, and married to Tracy, and we have two kids. Kara Ann is a sophomore and Will is in 6th grade. So I have a high schooler and a middle schooler. Yeah. So these guys, I'm relying on them heavily.
And I'm Aaron Riddle. I'm the middle school pastor here. I am the newest parent out of the four of us. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
1.5-year-old.
A
half-year-old.
But yeah, so I absolutely am passionate about the next generation, about middle school students and just young adults as a whole.
Yeah. And I'm Don. I'm married to Donna. We've been married 39 years. That makes me the old guy.
Yes, it does.
I'm getting really tired of that
role.
role. I have two daughters in their 30s. And they each have 3 kids. Jennifer and Jason have kids from 9 to 4, going in that direction. And Tracy and Zach have children 5, 4, and just about a month old.
Wow.
Yay.
I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and work with high school students, and most of the time they kind of act like 6 and 4-year-olds, so it works out.
You know what you're doing.
So what we're going to do is basically just have a conversation. In future roundtables like this, we'll have some specific questions.
It's a rectangle.
It's a square. We're around the table.
Round
table.
table.
We're going to call it
Round table
for that reason.
Okay, there we go.
In the future, we may have some specific questions that people will be able to ask us. We'll talk about that when we're done with the conversation. But for right now, we're really just kind of kick around some parenting concepts, and specifically as it pertains to Westover's vision. In the first conversation that we're having about this, it's taking this unique opportunity to look at Westover's vision. How does that actually impact and inform how we parent? Mm-hmm. I think we can go lots of different places with the vision of Westover. It's so founded in biblical truth that it can impact so many different areas of our life. So we're just going to kind of kick that around as it pertains to parenting. So the purpose of Westover Church, in case you didn't know, is to develop mature followers of Jesus Christ, and we do that through 3 different steps, and we're going to kind of kick through what those 3 things are, starting with
growing in the gospel. So we want to develop mature followers of Jesus Christ through growing in the gospel. And I love the way Westover leadership has defined gospel. They say the gospel is the good news that through faith in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, a person is forgiven of sin and transformed to live in a restored relationship with God by grace. I think that's just so powerful, but that should inform the way we parent and the way we live as parents and as in a relationship and a marriage too. But so, what do you guys think? How does that impact our families?
I think it better impact our families, right? I mean, it better impact everything that we do. Faith in Christ. So now I know that's point number 1. It better
everything.
Our
it impacts everything.
Yeah, I can't say that when our girls were young, I was thinking of how to grow them in the gospel, and that's in the specific way as parenting. But as you were reading how we kind of describe it, the gospel is a reminder that we are redeemed and forgiven. And so, as parents, to be about having a redeeming culture, that our kids are going to do things wrong. And so if that could be more the attitude that we have, it could have a real impact. I quite frankly have never given this a lot of thought until we came to this round table. And I think there's more practical things to this than I realized, starting with the fact, although we are forgiven, we're forgiven sinners, and there's this environment of grace. And I'm not sure parents always do a great job in being grace-filled.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because it's such a challenge. I mean, you got to look for opportunities in those moments where you can teach this and model this, and it takes time and intentionality. Where, let's say kids are arguing over a toy, they're fighting over a toy. Instead of just saying, "Hey, give the toy back," or it takes intentionality to say, "This is a teachable moment where I can say, you know what, love of self, address the heart issue, and love of self is the root cause, and go deeper than just behavior modification."
Yeah. And I think most of us parents, we're busy, we've got a lot going on, and I know for Tracy and I, it's difficult sometimes to take time to be intentional, because we're trying to get dinner on the table, we're trying to get homework done, and we've got the kids that they may be arguing, or it's been a stressful day.
That happens?
All the time in my house. And so, you have to really be intentional with yourself to even take time to be intentional. I know that kind of sounds strange, but it requires, as parents, us to just pause and go, okay, we are crazy busy right now, but we have got to see this as a moment when we can, intentionally share good news with our kids.
Yeah.
And that can happen around the dinner table when everybody kind of gets situated and you're finally around the table. Then you can take those moments to talk about, the good things that have happened that day, or how Christ has impacted how the kids did life at school that day. Those are the intentional moments.
Yeah.
I think the hard thing for me personally with grace is that I expect people to have grace with me. I'm usually more hesitant to extend grace to others, and when you translate that into marriage and parenting, I think that kind of a concept is very difficult to. In the reality, our kids are going to do what we do. They're not necessarily going to do what we say. They're going to do what we do. And if they see us not modeling grace in our marriage or in the way we interact with them, I already see with Colt and Emmy at 6 and 4. Like 80% of the words they say are words that Holly.
Yeah, they're your words.
I hear him talk and go, "Was that Holly or was that Emmy?" And so what we do and how we interact with our spouse and with our kids makes a huge difference in the way that they experience and understand the gospel.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, if as parents we're not transformed by this, if we have not experienced the true transformation that only the gospel can bring, then how can we expect our kids to be impacted by this?
No.
We can't. We have to be transformed.
I think a lot of times as parents, we parent out of strength, and yet the gospel is not that we're not strong and mature, but there's something about the gospel that is that constant reminder where we've come from. And I don't think we do that as parents. Like, we never allow our kids to have a bad day. We can have a bad day, but we're adults. But we don't allow our kids to have a bad day or kids to make mistakes. And if we would be more vulnerable, remembering where we came from, I think it would soften how we parent out of strength. I don't know exactly how to say that. Do you understand? What I'm talking about?
Well,
Absolutely.
one of the verses that we have connected with growing in the gospel is 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 4, and it says, "Now I would remind you, brothers, of the gospel I preached to you, which you received, and in which you stand, and by which you are saved, if you hold fast to this word I preached to you. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that He was buried, that He was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures." I love that. There's like two different connections here when it talks about the gospel in which we stand, in which we are being saved, that we should hold fast to. That's our role, is to hold fast to this gospel, to let it impact us. But what we're holding fast to is that Christ did the work, that He was buried, that He was raised on the third day, that He died for our sins. He did all that work. For me, that helps a lot to put the whole thing in focus of my responsibility with the gospel is not to be him.
Yeah.
It's to allow him to continue to change me and hold fast in that. Those two words really stand out to me, to hold fast in that.
Because the reality is, as parents, we cannot do this thing called parenting. There's no way. I mean, we are going to fail time and time and time again. And so I think that's why, as we allow the gospel to transform us, Christ can parent our kids through us in our weakness, in our strength, in our failures, in our fun, good times. But it's all Christ, not us. And I know for me, I have got to remind myself of that every day. I cannot do this lest Christ be in me, flowing out of me to minister to my wife and to my kids.
I don't know if you're getting anything out of this, but I'm already convicted of stuff just from this
Me
conversation.
too.
Yeah.
Just by saying that, I'm convicted.
I hope this isn't just one big conviction to you. I hope it's more encouraging. But I'm thinking about if we as parents, you as younger parents, would remember what it was like to be a child. As pastors, we would be better counselors if we would remember days that we struggled and walking with Christ, or days before we were with Christ. Again, we get to that point where we think we've learned it all and we become mature. And the minute we do that, the best teacher is a teacher who remembers what it was like to learn information. I think the best parent is the one who can try to, and that's so hard, but try to remember. And there's something about that's the gospel, that we never forget. Not that we dwell there, but that we never forget what we once were. We'll be better witnesses, and I think better pastors. And that's so hard because kids can drive you crazy and put you right into that. How can you ever do, you know? So
Yeah.
We could probably talk about this one all day long. Let's jump over to the second vision statement. So we've got our purposes develop mature followers of Jesus Christ through growing in the gospel, and then
yeah, the second one, Michael, is at Westover we want to connect in community, and that's a big deal. We really have a desire among leadership to improve in this great desire to connect in community. In fact, I think the desire at Westover is that we'd be a church that would have hundreds, maybe thousands of these communities. So let me just describe how leadership has described a community. Is that it's made up of people who've been transformed by the gospel, but to do two specific things. One, who would personally care for one another, but the second part sometimes is harder, and to be willing to be cared for.
Right.
Now, my immediately thought when it comes to parenting is in families should be the practice community.
Absolutely.
Now, it's more difficult because, you know, we live together 24/7 and everybody sees our bad sides and so on, but what a great way to think of parenting as a community.
Yeah. One thing you just said is we live together 24/7 and everybody sees our, knows everything about us. I think that's one of the key elements of authentic community is the authenticity. You can come and broken, messed up, messy person and be cared for and to care for others. And I think that's huge in community. That's a major aspect of it.
I remember something that we try to tell couples as they're getting married is think of your new relationship that you are a family. You're not a family 2-3 years from now when you have a child. You're a family now. So in many ways, we can break this down to even husband and wife are a community.
Oh, absolutely.
And do they allow themselves to care for and be cared for one another? In many ways, they're not going to model parenting necessarily better than they model their relationship.
Yeah.
that relationship, the health of that relationship will inform the health of the rest of the community that is the overall family.
Yeah.
And yet, sometimes when we think of community, we think of classic small groups. It's more than that. It can be any group that's smaller. But in small groups, when you have training, you know you're going to have somebody in the group that may be different, someone who's quiet, someone who talks a lot. And as a facilitator, it's your goal to try to bring everyone out, to try to not let one person dominate, so you're kind of more a coach than anything else. And I think parenting is really more that. Sometimes we make the mistake of trying to make everybody the same, or you got to act this way. And we all know kids are not the same.
Absolutely.
They're not the same. And yet, if we would think about this thing as community, in community, we allow people to be different. So I think there's a whole thing here if we would just think of family through this connecting in community. There's a lot more practical things than we might realize.
One of the verses that we have for this one is Ephesians 4:15 and 16. It says, "Rather, speaking the truth in love, we're able to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love." When I read that in the context of the family, there's so much potential for our family units to experience just an intimate community that builds itself up in love. When I hear that phrase, it speaks a lot of purpose into my family, and it sets the bar higher than I normally would set it. How does that hit you guys? That as a body, as a community, we should be building ourselves up in love.
Yeah, when you were reading that passage, the first thing that popped in my brain was, how often do I not speak the truth in love?
Give us 7 or 8 examples.
Oh yeah, I could give you a
From
thousand
today.
from today, yeah. I mean, the tyranny of the urgent, the stress of a moment just invades. And before you know it, you are. And who do we speak the roughest to? Who do we speak the harshest to? Our family. There are a lot of times that we will speak kinder to people that we run into, to strangers on the street, than we will our families. And I know I'm guilty of that, and we all are.
Yeah.
But that's where my brain went, speaking the truth in love. If we just would care for our families and speak truth in love to our kids. I think then the scripture goes on, then we will grow up in every way. We will become mature in Christ. But it starts with speaking truth in love. And that's difficult at times.
The obvious, not to heap guilt, to be a community, sometimes you have to gather as a community. And today's families are so busy that sometimes they're never together as a family. And I understand, we were there, sports and you name it, and yet somewhere intentionally the family has to come together to be a community. So it starts with the obvious. If the 5 of you, the 7 of you, the 3 of you never come together, you'll never be this community.
There's a comedian who made a joke about corn, that we refer to corn when it's separated as corn, and corn when it's on the cob. We make that a specific, it's corn on the cob.
Yeah.
We have to, we're calling it something different than corn. When you say corn, you expect it to be scattered. When you say corn on the cob, it's as it was intended. I think so many times the family is that way. We experience the family in a more scattered situation, and we have to call it out, and we have to be a family and be intentional about getting that time together. How do you do that? How do we do it in 2014, 2015? How do you make that happen?
Because all of culture, culture as a whole is pulling us apart. Activities are pulling us apart, and I'm not anti-activity, but culture is pulling the family apart. And so if we don't have that intentionality, before we know it, we will have gone the whole week without sitting down for dinner. So I know for us, we've made time at the table around dinner an absolute priority. So that we are together, we try to, for every meal. And I just think that's right. That in itself is huge. We have
Some people are hearing that and saying, that's so
Oh.
retro, so old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We couldn't have dinner if we tried with their schedule.
Absolutely.
So are there other ways?
I think initially you need to, as a family, every piece of that family, every corn needs to understand the value. And everybody, I think once everybody buys in, and especially as parents the parents buy in and there's value there, then the intentionality comes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know families that look at their schedule for the upcoming week and
Absolutely.
they carve out time, and those are, around practices. But again, what's more valuable, family time or fill in the blank?
So even if they don't do dinner time well, there are other times.
Sure. Yeah, I think you can establish set times for quality time, whether that's over a meal or being intentional, going somewhere as a family or what have you. So.
And the key word that you just said is intentionality.
Yeah.
Because if we're not intentional, our schedules will get away from us.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be running here and there and everywhere. We have to be intentional. And if that's intentional time around the table, if that's intentional driving time to activities, if that's intentional meeting up, I'm bringing Will somewhere and Tracy's bringing Kara somewhere, and so we meet up for dinner or a smoothie. It's just being intentional. And I think that's just critical. If we're not intentional, it's going to get away from
But
us.
that would be true even if we draw back the purpose of Westover is to develop mature followers of Jesus Christ. That's not going to happen without intention. is
Not
it?
at all.
So I know from a grandparent standpoint, there's nothing more Donna loves than being together as a family. Now we only have 2 daughters, so when we all get together, it's 12 of us. But it's amazing how hard we work to get the 12 of us. This Saturday, we're going to be together swimming at our club. Do you know how long that took to get everybody to get this Saturday? And then all of a sudden we had a basketball game thrown in there. We thought that didn't start till another week. So we got to go around that. That's just one example. Now we do some other things, but we took the calendar, we had a lot of emails.
Absolutely.
Just to do that. There's no other way to do that.
Right.
Well, I think if that may
Absolutely.
sound like a daunting process, but if you're watching this and you've invested this much time already into watching this conversation, you've got time. This is doable. It's something that you can do.
That's right.
If you want it, you'll do it.
And see, and it goes back to the marriage. When Donna and I were first married, had young kids, we were very disciplined. Thursday night was our date night.
Mm-hmm.
It was intentional. We took our calendar and we learned the hard way. We could give that time away, or we could say, no, I have an appointment that night, and that date with my wife was as important as anything else. Intentionality to be community. There's no shortcut on that.
And I think sometimes opportunities just present themselves that even if we're intentional about those opportunities, like for example, the other day, it was a Saturday, and we had gone to a picnic, and I knew that the backyard was about this deep in leaves. And so, as a good parent would, I said to my kids, now if we all work together, we can get this backyard, we can knock it out. And so after, tons of complaining, the 4 of us, Tracy, myself, the 2 kids, we were out in the backyard. For an hour, we had fun. The kids got into it. We spent time together. We were raking. We were taking the leaves down. It became, even though the kids couldn't stand going into it, it became a time when we spent some quality time together, even around raking leaves.
The old family farm.
Right, yeah, that's right. Working together. And Tracy and I didn't go into it intentionally saying, hey, we're going to have intentional time with our kids around working. It just happened.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I recognize it, but then that influences me to go, gosh, we need to rake leaves more, or
You
know,
lazy bum.
I know.
More than once a year.
Come down
Right,
to
more than once a year.
I often joke my dad had 3 sons because he needed people to rake leaves.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Often on Saturday mornings, I'd see people, you guys driving by, and I'd be out in the yard raking leaves. And
But you built community with your brothers. didn't
Three
you?
of us live in the same
yes,
neighborhood.
Yes, but yeah, and my dad has said it many times. One of his favorite things to do is to be working in the yard with this kid, with his family. And I'm like, sounds terrible to me, but there's it's quality time
It is.
where you're rubbing shoulders and having conversations that you may not be if you're,
Oh yeah.
you know, in the
Now,
movies or whatever.
you're probably going to have kids complaining to you because their parents now are going to have
can't go on a
them.
date 'cause
Let's
I
all
gotta
clean
have a
out the
date with my
garage
family."
together.
That's right.
Let's clean the bathrooms together. Let's build community.
Let's
But I think
do
the point
bathrooms
is you
together.
can build community around different
Yeah.
activities, not
Any
just
way.
a set
I
around.
think one of
That's
the
right.
one of the important things in connecting with community, when you spend that time together, the more you're around each other. Have you ever gone on a family trip together? You know that long rides in the car usually don't end up with hugs and sweet emotions. It's usually there's friction, there's tension, and as a family, the more time you're around each other, the easier it can be to experience that friction. But at the same time, there's more and more opportunities to speak in love, to build up in love.
Absolutely.
And that again, it takes intentionality, not just to gather, but to experience that differently, to make the most of those opportunities and see it as the potential
Yeah.
to grow each other.
Amen.
Okay, what about this? Obviously, when children are younger, you want to really develop community, family. I remember we had a corny family cheer. You do a lot
No,
of.
no,
Let's
no,
hear
we have
it.
to
We
hear
gotta
it.
hear the
Let's
cheer.
say it. Here,
Come
say
on.
it.
Yeah, you can't say it. We had a cheer and not say it.
We are family. We are family.
Hey!
That's it.
What do you call that noise?
It's just something we did. When the kids are young, you need to play into that. You need to play into traditions, so that when they're older, they're going to be the ones that say, "Wait, we can't have fall without raking the leaves. We can't do this.
Oh, yeah,
not
yeah,
just
yeah.
holidays." So what about those parents who the kids aren't as young and they're like, "Is it too late?" I don't have an answer. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing out the
Well,
question.
there's a pendulum to that, I think, because I talk to high school students all the time, and it's this that push back a little bit. They're trying to be more independent. They want to be their own corn. They don't want to be on the cob. But what's always funny to me about October, November of the first year away from the family, so whether it's first year of college or a year away, whatever, you start to swing into the holiday season, and it is so funny to me how focused those students become on wanting that stuff again. They come back and it's, "Mom, please make that meal that you always used that I used to hate, and I didn't want to eat it, but please make it, and please let's sing Christmas carols together." And they just they crave that, and so even if it's hard in a couple of years where they're trying to become their own person, which is normal. That's a normal part of being a family. Is as you grow, your corn's going to go off and have their own cob.
Yeah.
But the more intentional you are at any stage, you're always preparing for that next stage, I think.
And I don't think it's ever too late. I don't think it's ever too late. You know, if parents haven't built that intentionality with their kids, and they may not have, you know, the best relationship, just start
now.
small. Start now. Start in some simple way. I don't think it's ever too late.
So it's not too late. So if a dad's never taken his girl on a date, do it at 16. Start
right now.
Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do it on Friday. I mean,
Hey, I
you know.
remember a time, story time. I took Jennifer out one of the dates. We went to an Italian restaurant, and she ordered minestrone soup.
Minestrone.
Instead of minestrone.
Minestrone.
The waitress kind of looked at me and I said, "I'll take some minestrone too."
Get to
Perfect.
She
Yeah,
wasn't
absolutely.
16.
That's right. Minestrone.
But I think for parents who maybe haven't been as intentional or haven't spent as much time, I think, like you said, it's never too late. But I think as a parent, if you just go to your son or daughter and explain your heart and your desire to spend time with them and to get to know what's going on in their lives. Man, that speaks so much value to the kid. That says you are valued and I care about taking the time to spend with you. And that's huge in their lives.
If there's any chance it can involve ice cream, that's going to be
absolutely. Hello. As much as our kids put on their shells, I mean, they shell themselves up to go to middle school or high school. As much as they do that, and then when they come home, they have those same shells on. They want mom and dad to love them and to get past the shell. They do want that. Deep down inside, they want us to get past the shell so that they can be our kid. They do want that. But the exterior sometimes is so hard, and we get tired hitting against that shell and hitting against that shell. So maybe we just need to try different approaches to get past the shell, to get to who our kid really is.
That's actually a good segue into the last vision, last part of the vision that we're talking about. So we've got growing the gospel, connecting community, and then we have one final one, that is
serving on mission. And I think a lot of people love Westover Church because we are a global missions church, and we see global ministries as key to everything that we do. But that's not specifically just what this is about. When we say serving on mission, we're talking about every aspect of your life. Wherever you find yourself, at the grocery store, at work, wherever it is, to join with God and see how God might use you to share the gospel, the good news, with someone in your sphere of influence. And that's what we mean. And that's the word we use a lot is missional. That's missional living. And that simply means living on mission. And so we believe that, as we grow in the gospel, that out of that is going to flow community. We're going to naturally want to surround ourselves in a Christ-following, gospel-centered community. But just as naturally out of the gospel, we're going to be serving on mission, using our gifts, influencing our neighborhoods, our communities, our workplaces, our schools. That's what we mean by serving on mission. So I guess the question is, how can we as families, how can we apply this to our families? How can we as families begin to serve on mission together, or how can we as parents help our kids understand serving on mission?
I think there's two different angles to it. There's how can your family serve others, and then how can you serve each other within the family unit. I think those are, I'm going to let you guys answer this.
Well, I thought two things. I thought, first of all, I've got to model that, but then that's way too convicting. So
next,
that'll require action on your part. Yeah, that's right.
But again, I think the opportunity is, the word is intentional. Mm-hmm. I know when Donna took a year with each of our girls when they were younger and spent a night with them for about a year to do a couple things. One was, that might be more of the growing the gospel. She wanted the girls to know what we believed. But then it wasn't, they just didn't do a Bible study 52 weeks out of the year. Then they did fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And they served. They did a lot of, let's make something and take it to somebody. Let's go to the shut-ins. And so the part of what you just said was, as a family, modeling together what it is to minister to people. Mm-hmm. How are our kids going to know the joy, what it's like to drop by and visit somebody that would love a visit if we don't model that or do that with them?
Absolutely.
One of the things I love that's new to Westover is Families in Action.
Yeah.
And
there's so much that's stressed so much more now than it was years ago.
Yeah, and basically what it is just young families going and serving together, and not just mom and dad or mom going off and serving on our own, but as a family, you're modeling as parents what it looks like to serve, and then you can be intentional about conversations about why we serve, once again, like you said, it's rooted in the gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracy, she is so much smarter than me any day of the week. She is. She has just done such a great job of modeling this with our kids. Even to the point sometimes that, especially during the summer when the kids are out of school, she'll like bring them up to the church and say, okay, it's service day, so we're going to do something here. Or she said to them, Kara Ann, who's older and who can babysit, she said to Kara, why don't you babysit, but let's not charge any money because this is your service.
This, I think, of the three is the easiest.
Oh, it is so easy.
As far as to make a list of things you could do. Like just use a service day. What a thought.
Yeah.
A family doing
family service
together,
day,
which would also create community.
Absolutely.
So what are the benefits of that?
Oh, wow.
We probably could go on forever.
Well,
Absolutely.
normally you tend to serve people who have need, or are needy the other side. So you might see someone that has far less than you have, or has been tossed in a situation that your family hasn't experienced yet.
Yeah.
If God gives your family health, how will they ever experience what it's like to deal with sickness unless you serve somebody that's going through that?
Yeah. So it opens their eyes.
It just opens the world to a bigger world.
I mean, it opens their eyes to people that are different than them. It opens their eyes. I think it opens their heart to compassion, because when you're serving someone and they're receiving your service, something happens in our hearts. And I've watched my kids, their hearts kind of open up to compassion at times. Man, that benefit alone is invaluable.
It's why we do Mission Camp and Project Serve on a bigger scale. When we moved here, Jennifer was 7th grade, and essentially she went as a rising 8th grader to what's Mission Camp, same place.
Yeah.
And the impact on her of seeing people with so little and be relatively so content, it changed her life in that way.
Wow.
It really did from that point on. So, but we can do that on smaller scale as families.
And you guys probably see it all the time with Project Serve and Mars Hill when the kids go. The impact that Mars Hill and Project Serve makes on your students.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I love is to hear at the end of the week what impacted students and give them the opportunity to share. And it is exactly what you said, just seeing other people with so much less, yet so thankful for what they have. And I think of the verse in 1 Thessalonians, be thankful in all circumstances. And again, the thankfulness is rooted in the gospel, not based off of our what we have or don't have, but based off of what has been done for us. And I think exposing kids to that is huge.
I guess my question is, why do we as parents wait for our kids to serve until they go to Mars Hill or until they go to Project Serve? What? And I guess that's the whole point of this conversation. Why do we have to wait on those things? Why can't we be intentional about creating those things now for our family so that when, it's time for him to go to Mars Hill in 2 years, he's been already doing this, I think that's a question we need to wrestle with.
Well, there's two different sides. There's action and there's attitude. We have in 2 Corinthians 5, we have this the verse that kind of connects with it. It talks about the ministry of reconciliation that we have as Christ followers. It says, therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God for our sake. He made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. That would go for days on that. But I think when it comes to serving on mission, there is the action of serving. When you go to Mars Hill Mission Camp, or you go to Project Serve, or you do Families in Action, or you do something. That's the action of serving. But I think that the other side of that is the attitude of serving. And I think they can inform each other. You can have an action of serving because you understand the attitude that you should have. But I see it every year. We have Project Serve. That's an action that someone goes. We have a lot of students who go because mom and dad say you're going. And they don't want to go. They don't have the attitude, but the process of serving develops within them the attitude of a servant.
Absolutely.
So how can you do that? If you're listening to this conversation going, okay, my kids don't have that attitude. I rarely have that attitude. How do you get that attitude? Is it safe to say if you don't have that attitude and you want that attitude, develop a more intimate relationship with God and then just start serving?
Yeah, I think it comes out of a love for the Lord, and so as people, as students understand, and, we have, as followers of Jesus Christ, have been called to love God and to love others. Mm-hmm. And so out of obedience to Him, not out of obligation, but obedience from the love that we have for Him, we love Him and we also love others. Mm-hmm. So that's a response of a follower of Jesus Christ. Yeah. I think as parents, practically though, we provide opportunities for them to love others. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And model that, provide the opportunities, but then serve alongside them and follow up. Don't just throw them out there and say, go serve, but follow up and ask questions about what they're learning from serving and how, not again, just not serving on mission trips or at the church and children's ministry, but how are you serving on mission in the school? Right. And talk about how you can do that in the lunchroom or on the soccer field. I think is a conversation parents need to have.
Yeah. And that statement there really kind of sums up this whole idea of serving on mission, is that how can our students, when they're in school, they're sitting at the cafeteria table, how can they see that as an opportunity to serve someone in the name of Christ? And, if all of our students would just look at going to school through that lens, oh my goodness, imagine, it would be huge.
And it's about getting outside, because I know middle school, especially in high school, it's self. It's about what's going on, how's this affecting me. It's very self-centered. So it's getting outside of that and turning your eyes to the world and loving your neighbor. I think as you see the world through this new lens, then you're able to do that and serve on mission. Yeah.
And some parents may be even thinking right now, well, I have a very self-centered kid. How can I get them?
You're all right. That's right. Everyone.
But just to bring up something said before is remember when you were that age.
Absolutely.
That's what you were like.
We were self-centered.
That's what I was like.
We
were.
All
about me.
Yeah.
Sure.
So how can we help our kids get beyond that, to look outside of themselves? I mean, what are some ways that we can help do that with our kids?
Got real quiet real quick.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
How do we really help our kids, see beyond themselves? Mm-hmm. And, I know it starts with prayer. I mean, without prayer, nothing's going to be accomplished. So we've got to pray for our children to experience that, but other ways.
I think Aaron said, try to present opportunities for them to be aware of the hurting world around without making your house into a depressing, because you could go, but I like the idea, just all you can do is present opportunities and hopefully they'll pick up on that.
Yeah. I think too, if your family is a community that is centered around the gospel, you have a more clear view of who God is, a more clear view of who you are. And if those two things are true, then you're going to see the world as a place that it's our role to be ambassadors for, to help them be reconciled to God. So I think the more intentional we are with our community, the more that's going to be a byproduct of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think as parents, as students, their heart is as there is in their heart, they are being transformed. It's not, hey, you need to serve, so go serve, but out of a love for God and out of a love for people, that will motivate service and serving on mission.
Yeah.
Not because parents said so, or not because there's a need, but because out of love. The source is the gospel. Once again, the source is the gospel, and the transformation that comes from the gospel.
When you get the gospel and grace, it's a big circle. The more you understand the grace we've been given, the more you want to give it away. The more you give it away, the more you understand what He really did for us, and just keeps going around and around and around. And I think wherever you are in that circle, just keep doing that. That makes a huge difference.
Sure.
Well, we've talked a lot about these three vision statements.
Just before can we just go back and attempt, we don't have this planned, but can we try to nail down something practical on every one of these things, either a thought or, so to summarize, so when it comes to growing in the gospel, what would we say to parents of middle schoolers and high schoolers? I don't have the answer there.
Yeah.
What's not the one thing, but one thing?
A practical step.
Well, I think just the first thing that comes to my mind, if you want a practical way to help your student or your family grow in the gospel, we have so many opportunities every single week for students to grow in the gospel, whether it's an Impact on Sundays or on Wednesdays, or a Fuse on Wednesday nights, or small groups. There's lots of things within the ministries here at Westover where we aim to help your family, help individuals grow in their understanding of the gospel, grow in an intimate relationship with God, and do that within the context of age-appropriate teaching. I think that's one really simple way.
Okay.
If your student's not already doing that, get them here.
Yeah.
Get them involved in those ministries. You will see an impact within your family. I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah, I guess two things to add on to that. One, we often get the question, what if my child just doesn't want to go? What, they kick and scream and fight every time I say you need to go. And we get that question a lot. And I was that child. I did not want to come to church. My parents drugged me here, and I fought it. But now I thank God they did. I look back and I thank the Lord that they said, no, I'm the authority, and I'm telling you, you're going. Through me coming to the church, I was exposed to the gospel. And I thank the Lord that my parents didn't just give in. So for what that's worth. But I think it's another practical thing is modeling it for them.
Yeah.
I think mentioned it briefly, but if I'm not growing in the gospel, I can't expect my kids to be growing in the gospel. And so
a lot of dads get so threatened by that because they think they have to be this greatest theologian or Billy Graham, and I often like to say to them, it could take nothing more than you, if you happen to be having dinner around the dinner table, saying, I was reading, having my quiet time, not to sound spiritual, and just this one phrase really meant a lot to me. It talked about, and then just stop. All you're trying to do is let your kids know, I was in God's Word, and it meant a lot to me, and then move on.
plant seeds, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to give an explanation of the hardest theological position. Just let them know that the Bible was impactful to your life.
Yeah.
That's all they need to do. That's anyway, sorry, I got to preach you.
If they see it work
No.
on you, they're going to trust that it'll work
Chris,
for them.
anything about...
Well, I would just, my thought is, along with Aaron's and yours, is I think if we want to allow the Lord to impact our families, we have to allow the Lord to impact us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most practical step I would have, and I know this sounds canned, it sounds like this Sunday school answer, but I don't mean it that way, is we have to spend time with the Lord. We have to, even just sitting with Him and saying, God, transform me, convict me, give me wisdom. I think when that happens, our parenting is going to be impacted. Our kids are going to be impacted. There is just natural outgrowth from that. That will happen before you even know what's happened. And I just think that is critical for us as parents to grow in the gospel. And I've just restated what you stated earlier.
But so much better.
No.
The second area was connecting community, and what I remember out of that, what we discussed, what I heard most was, first of all, think of your family as a community, the dynamics of community, and then I heard a lot about intentionality, whether it was dinner or schedule.
Or raking leaves.
Or raking leaves.
Or cleaning toilets.
Cleaning toilets.
Anything else on
Well,
that kind of-
one thing that's kind of hit me as you mentioned this again, transparency I think is huge. When you're trying to create a community, if you're creating a small group, the more you get to know the people in the group, the more connected you feel.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a tension that we feel as parents to create separation between kids and parents. And there's me taking care of parent things, and there's you being a kid. But I think the more transparent you can be, both in what you struggle with, finances. This is why we spend money the way we do. This is why we save money the way we do. And that just has practical application on the rest of their life. But the more transparent you are, the more your kids will experience community within your family.
Even to the point of, and I know this is difficult for us parents, but even to the point of when we are wrong.
Oh, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, never in my house. When we are wrong, being able to have the courage to go to our kids and apologize and just to admit, I was wrong. I think that does more to create transparency, to create this authentic community within the family unit than anything else. When we can just do that.
Expect them to do that.
Right. We want them to do that for us.
No, we make them do it.
We make them do that for
tell
us.
You're going to go
brother you're
apologize.
sorry.
Whether you're actually sorry or not, you're going to go apologize.
That's
So
right.
But when we do that, it not only creates community, it creates trust.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
trust us so much more when they see us as equals before the cross. I mean,
That's right.
That creates a trust that will, no matter where you are now in the years coming up, if you do that, you will continue to build more trust with your kid towards you.
Amen.
And
Boom,
the last,
there it is right
the
there.
last area, serving on mission, I think I heard opportunities, but not only the church, family create opportunities. Especially in our days, that part is doable, and I think we cover that okay.
Oh, yeah. Every day it's doable.
You guys have any other nuggets of wisdom? With all the years and decades.
And my
of
kids are
parenting?
grown up, I don't have to
Yeah, really.
pay any attention to any of this.
I'm
So
hoping
while
y'all
you
give me
should have
some
all the
good stuff
answers,
to
you
mine
just
on
don't
too,
just
so-
release. You don't want to know that stuff anymore.
I'm just sitting here thinking, these guys have not paid us to do this at all. But I really am thankful as I'm just sitting around the square table for these two guys. And not just them, but their team that love our kids. And I just think that the more that we can help forge a relationship with these guys and their teams and their small group leaders and their volunteers, the more that we've got godly adults speaking into our kids, oh my goodness.
That's one of the things Donna and I always prayed for, and I've heard other parents say this. We always prayed for those people who come alongside, especially as they got older, who would support what we've been trying to say. And you guys, between the two of you, have at least 100, probably more, that make up your team. Just think about how cool that is.
Yep.
100 people that are just passionate about loving on
That's
kids
huge. Yeah.
for Jesus.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, well, we are blessed with great volunteers, and I think that is God's blessing and God's favor on Westover, because, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve at a church that sees value in the next generation, and shows that, not just says it, but shows it and supports that. And so I thank you guys for that. I think you asked for my nugget of wisdom. This is my little bit of nugget. But as pastors, we
lean in.
That's all I got. Well, as followers of Christ, we are called to go make disciples. And that is a maturity process. As a church, we desire to see people mature, to grow and mature. And so we have an intentionality about discipling them until they are able to go on their own and make disciples. And I think as families, as parents, we should have that same mindset of developing our children to then send them off on their own, but then they can go develop and pour into their children and disciple them in the same way. So I think if we keep that same mindset that we as followers of Christ have been in the Great Commission called to do, as parents, emulate that within our families.
Oh, absolutely.
That's all I got.
Yeah. I think for me, there are several things that come out of my failure. And one is to parents, I mean, you're not alone in your parenting. I mean, you're not the only one that's having struggles with your kid. We all are having struggles. And I think sometimes as parents we think, oh, well, I'm the only one struggling with a rebellious teenage daughter. No. I mean, we're not. So, and I think that when I hear other parents struggling with that, and as I've even shared, you know, and I'm not saying we have a rebellious teenage daughter. She's not that way at all. But parents will respond, oh my goodness, you struggle with that too? So, I mean, we're just not alone. I think the second thing that I've learned the hard way is, as parents, we have just got to stop comparing ourselves to each other. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, we compare our parenting, you know, you can't compare your parenting to Don and Donna's.
Hope not.
No, not at all. You can't compare your parenting to me and Tracy. And I think so often as parents, you know, we just compare. Well, they're doing that, and we hear what, you know, Chris Lewis is doing with his kids, and gosh, I need to do that. I feel bad because I'm not doing that. I must be a bad father. Mm-hmm. And that it does more to devalue what it is we're trying to do. So we got to stop comparing. And then the last thing that I've just kind of learned is so often I'm making all kinds of mistakes with my kids. And someone said it at 10 at 10 one time. It's a staff gathering that we do every Tuesday at 10 o'clock for 10 minutes. And someone said, aren't you glad? Thank God for grace. Because in the end, it's all grace. And, you know, I may think I have created these children that are going to have to go to years of therapy to get over all the negative stuff that I've done. But it's all grace. The grace of God covers all our mistakes, all our challenges, you know, all the times when we yell at our kids or we spank them a little too hard. The grace of God covers all that. And that just helps me to know God's grace is sufficient, even in parenting my kid. So that's all I got.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for watching. I want to thank these guys for giving out all this wonderful nuggets of wisdom. Hopefully you've been able to see the heartbeat of Westover is it's this big massive place, big massive building, but our intention and our heart is that your family would be able to experience a community that is surrounding the gospel and that actually serves on mission, and there are practical ways that you can do that. So if some of the stuff we've been talking about, I've got lots of other questions, and I have lots of follow-up questions and specific questions. Please let us know. We'll be potentially doing some more of these. So if you have things that your family's struggling with that you want us to talk about in this kind of a setting that you think would be valuable to have a conversation about, send us an email to fuse@westoverchurch.com, and we'll be doing hopefully some more of these in the future. Thank you so much for your time and your attention, and thanks so much for being a part of Westover.